Light, I think, can play a very important role in AI, precisely with this application in mind. One of the aspects of those layers of neural network is vector matrix multiplication. And vector matrix multiplication is a very good point for optics because it does it naturally. Any scattering is a vector matrix multiplication. There are advantages also in optics compared to electronics. For example, bandwidth. Optics can have great bandwidth. So as a result, you can have more information there. Another aspect of optics is spatial modes. You can have a lot of modes within a system. Whether this mode would be inside the waveguides, whether this mode would be just propagation. Look at the lens. I mean, a lens can do Fourier transforming in one shot. That's amazing. That just because all the spatial mode that you have, the wave can propagate different angles, different directions there. Another thing, of course, is parallelism. A parallelism in optics is amazing. Electronic does not have as much parallelism as optics has. That's very important. Multi-frequency parallelism. You can have in a single region, you can have different colors. Go through this and would do different processing there in optics. So naturally, one would think that when we want to do optical computing, we better stay with analog. And that's quite fascinating because analog system can do its own thing. However, analog system has its own constraints. So we have to be realistic. Noise, clearly. Digital system, because of the digital system, you can actually get rid of that variation of the noise. And that's one of the beautiful aspects of Boolean algebra in digital system. In optics, noise obviously is there. So the natural question to ask is that, yes, with all the advantages that I mentioned for optics, we need to choose an application area that would be applicable to that the noise doesn't affect that. Let me give you an interesting example. Our eyes. Our eyes can do amazing things, by the way. If you look at it, this is analog system. In the presence of noise, our eyes work beautifully. So optics can do a lot of interesting things.
Very energy efficient.
Very energy efficient.
Would you say that the optical components of the eyes are doing that, or is it then after it's already converted to an electrical signal?
A good question. I meant mostly from the point of view of lensing system that we have. Yes, eventually when optics gets to your photoreceptors, and at that point it turns into electrochemical signal that gets into your brain. That, of course, part of this is electronic, yes. But before it gets there, and the image that's formed on your retina, that's purely going through the optics in the materials and lens that you do that. And there's a noise there, no question about it. The molecules of visual pigments in our photoreceptors will pick up the signal. Yes, in the presence of the noise, still it works. So what I'm saying is, yes, the analog system could be noisy, but that should not scare us because there are many applications that the presence of noise may not be that crucial. If the application requires the tremendous precision, we better stay with the electronics and digital. Yes. But if the application is something that it's okay to have some noise, then the optics can do a great job. Imaging, one aspect of it. Sensing, another application of that. Vector matrix multiplication.
Surprisingly.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Can do that. Inversion of a matrix, the one that we have shown, can do that. And maybe some more, coming along. So we have to be judicious in choosing what aspects of light can help us in computing, what aspects of light electronic can help us. And we shouldn't be prejudiced one with respect to the other. Whichever works, that will do. And in fact, in my opinion, it's a hybrid system. Eventually, it's a hybrid system. Electronic is fantastic in storage. Optics storage is very hard. In that case, we have to also take into account the fact that yes, you do as much as possible, you do with optics to do the processing and computation, and at the end, you may store it electronically, and so on there. Optics can do another interesting point, and that is very small latency. And that's not necessarily just the speed of light. Yes, speed of light is very good, we all like that. But one can argue, in fact, Peter McMahon from Cornell University has a very interesting review article. It says, if I even take some wires and I connect from this point to that point, that can also go with almost speed of light. Even coaxial cable can go with the speed of light. So yes, the speed of light is important, but that's not the reason that optics is good. It's a latency issue that would be better. Because every time in electronic we do certain processing, analog to digital conversion, or the vice versa, digital to analog conversion, all of that takes energy and takes time. And that adds to latency. If we can do as much as possible with the light, that brings down the latency and the throughput becomes much better in that regard. So that knowledge is very important to consider that. Coming back to your question is that with regard to the why light, I think can play a very important role in AI, precisely with this application in mind. In fact, in AI, as you all know, particularly in the neural network, one of the aspects of those layers of neural network is vector matrix multiplication. And vector matrix multiplication is a very good point for optics because it does it naturally. So any scattering is a vector matrix multiplication. Any scattering. That's how I got interested in that from metamaterial point of view. After all, metamaterial, you will design them to have interesting properties like index near zero and so on. Then we said, why not do it in such a way that you can have solving an equation? After all, if that is the goal, let's actually design something that you send a wave through this would do solving equations. And that's how, my thinking worked that way. Another thing, by the way, is, as I mentioned, nonlinearity. Nonlinearity in electronic, of course, is prominent. I mean, as we talk about the transistor, diode, these guys are a wonderful nonlinear element. Optics nonlinearity is weak. So if we want to choose an area of computations, we have to be aware of these constraints and advantages of optics versus electronics. And again, both can be very useful in their own domain. Another thing, by the way, is also what happens if you have a signal in optics and you would like to actually distribute that to several points. Optics can do a much better job than electronics. With wiring, it might be harder to get it, whereas optics is naturally. Likewise, you can actually concentrate the signal at the point, whereas in electronics that would be harder. So there are several aspects that optics can do better than electronics, but there are many aspects also that the electronics can do better than optics. So that's quite important to consider that. Coming back to the AI, I think yes, vector matrix multiplication is naturally to be there. But of course, also in neural network, you need nonlinearity. So again, you see some of the things that optics can do, but then nonlinearity, electronic can do better. If we can improve, and that's one of the interesting direction that one can take, is that how to enhance nonlinearity in optics. A lot of work going on in that regard, particularly using quantum engineering. People have shown, I am sure you're very aware of it, have shown few photons nonlinearity. That's fascinating work. An interesting point is that if those type of few photons or single photon nonlinearity can be brought into this AI region, that would be quite fascinating. So if you do vector matrix multiplication, as you know, in the case of neural network, you need to turn that into a signal, either using sigma function or using ReLU function. Can that be done, for example, optically? Right now, that requires some energy. If one can do that with a lower energy, that would be a big step.